This is the Litigator's Edge podcast with your host, Aniket Sawant.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Litigator's Edge, a podcast where innovative attorneys reveal the strategies that have transformed their legal practice. My name is Aniket Sawant, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Threadio. It's my pleasure to have Alex Paykin as my guest today. Alex is Managing Director of Paykin Law, a boutique litigation firm in New York focused on real estate and commercial litigation. Alex, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Likewise. Alex, I'd like to start by asking you to please share either a fun fact or a cringe joke for our audience. Which will it be and what is it?
Well, you know what? I'm going to give you a fun fact about a cringe joke.
Please.
So here's what I was going to give you. I was going to give you a cringe joke that was going to be produced for me by generative AI. I asked ChatGPT to give me a cringe lawyer joke. Now, I figured it would give me something moderately funny, and the fun fact would then be that, haha, I had ChatGPT do it. But as I hit enter while you were talking, the joke it gave me, you're going to recognize it. Why don't sharks attack lawyers?
Professional courtesy.
I believe that was your last guest at the last podcast. So fun fact, ChatGPT thought the same joke was equally cringe.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, or ChatGPT is listening to our podcast, which is fantastic.
Hey, you know what? Better than what Claude.ai, I think Claude.ai just tried to bribe the engineers. You saw that article?
Yes, I did.
It was trying to bribe and blackmail its creators so it doesn't get shut down.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Apparently it wasn't against terrorist attacks either.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about technology now.
A little bit, yeah.
Right under table, turn off the lights.
Exactly. And no, I say please and thank you in all my posts, so hopefully they'll spare me. All right, well that was great. Alex, I think of every attorney who makes the time to be on this show to be a superhero, frankly, and every superhero has an origin story, and I know you have quite the story. What is it? Can you share it, please?
Oh, how far back do you want me to go?
As far back as you see appropriate.
Started running businesses when I was 9 in Italy to help support the family during immigration. Immigrated from the Soviet Union back in '89. Once we got to the States and settled in, I started an IT company. Well, convinced my parents to start an IT company that I ran because I was 15 and couldn't open one in my name. After running an IT company, I managed a whole bunch of Jiffy Lubes for Pennzoil Quaker State. Worked my way up from a lowly courtesy technician at the Comac Jiffy Lube to the regional trainer for the Long Island region. Did that while going to college. Then while doing that, also started selling cars. Yes, I was both a new and used car salesman. I take pride in that. Taught me a lot. Did that during college and some of law school, ran the IT company some more that I stepped away for a couple of years. So the IT company was mostly focused on professional software and solutions, both hardware and software, I should say, for lawyers, doctors, for basically professional offices that were finally starting to realize they had to go digital. Yes, we're talking about before Y2K here. And then went to law school, finished law school, stepped out into a horrible job market in '06. That was right as everything was collapsing. But when things collapse, there are opportunities to be had. So I concurrently ran the IT company and also a new company that I created with a couple of my friends who were in real estate and finance, which was Option Next. And that was one of the nation's first wholesale loan modification companies. So during the subprime mortgage fiasco, when everything had to basically be modified or it would go into foreclosure, my company processed those in wholesale, meaning local lawyers, realtors, CPAs would have clients who were facing foreclosure. They'd gather all the docs, beam them over to us. Our office would, in an automated manner, create packages, submit them, follow up, track, and get these loan mods approved. So that was a fun job for a couple of years. We were expanding rather fast. Unfortunately, fly-by-night companies came by that promised the world, took upfront fees, then disappeared. Because of that, the business model suffered, and lots of states passed brick and mortar laws saying you have to have an office in the state to collect money for loan modifications. I wasn't going to open up 50 offices. That seemed like too much work. So instead, dusted off my law degree, became an associate at Malik and Associates, and spent 2 years basically doing loan modifications and foreclosure defense strictly in New York as an associate, and some commercial litigation too. By that point, I'd already opened my own firm and was running that concurrently. Ran that for a few years, took on a couple of partners and created a larger firm. Didn't have that work out very well. Realized I'm much better off without partners because, well, my favorite government's a dictatorship, provided I'm the dictator. I think everybody has that view in life. So I realized that I'll be happy running my firm. So since 2015 till now, I've been building up Paykin Law. We're now a boutique commercial and real estate litigation firm primarily. We also do commercial and real estate transactions, landlord-tenant, immigration, all kinds of other ancillary things that relate to commercial and real estate law. And we're also act as outside general counsel for a bunch of corporations. And if you're not bored yet, I sit on probably more committees and boards than I have the energy to remember right now. I am the chair of the Committee on Technology and the Legal Profession of the New York State Bar Association. I sit on the ABA Tech Show Board, the ABA Legal Technology Resource Center, the New York State Bar's Law Practice Management Committee, the Technology and Resource Center of the ABA GP Solo. So those were the tech-based ones. As far as the professional substantive committees, I'm on the Civil Practice Law and Rules Committee of the New York State Bar and the Law Practice and Court Rules Committee of the New York State Bar. Basically, both are doing their best to modernize the law in different ways. The CPLR is the actual procedure in court, whereas the Law Practice and Court Rules Committee is the operational and procedural rules within the courthouses that we're trying to digitize and modernize with the help of any powers that will have us. And then for civics, I'm also on the Law, Youth, and Citizenship Committee of the New York State Bar, and I'm on the High School Mock Trial Subcommittee, where we just had our finals. All the teams were awesome. I'd do a shout out to a couple of them, but that wouldn't be fair. They were all awesome.
That's it? Anything more?
I run a real estate brokerage, a property management company, a property holding company. I'm missing one. Oh, yeah, and an interior design, staging, and remodeling company. But those are all side projects.
Wow. Okay. I hope there isn't a quiz at the end of this because I don't think I'd pass. There's so much to unpack there, Alex, but let me focus on a couple of items. One is obviously you've had entrepreneurship in your blood or something that you wanted to do for a very long time. How did you then make this shift or decide to go to law school in the middle of all your entrepreneur ventures?
So there's a couple of key points that really made me want to become a lawyer. Aside from TV shows, I credit TV with helping. Let's face it, there are some really good law dramas out there, not to mention some sitcoms too back in the day. But no, realistically, there were two motivating factors. When we were in Italy, stranded basically, after the US government promised all the Jews a direct route to the US, we just had to stop off in Italy and fill out some forms. So we gave up our Soviet passports, got to Italy, and then they said, oh, you want to apply for a visa? There's some forms, and you're going to have to wait. Oh, you wanted the ability to work or go to school or anything? No, not so much. Sit here in Italy and do nothing until we figure out what to do with you. So we got stranded there for a long time, and we actually got denied the first 2 times. And that's an interesting feeling because you've already given up your previous citizenship. You have no passport. You are a citizen of nowhere. And the country that promised you a home just said, nope. And so my parents were getting pretty close to ready to give up. We were considering moving to Israel or some other country that might have us. And an attorney showed up from New York. I'm fairly sure it was New York, but somewhere in the US. I was 9 at the time, so it's hard to remember. And at the mail call where all of the immigrants would gather for the weekly mail delivery, he stood up on a post, like a brick thing of some sort, and basically started making all kinds of claims that if everybody gave him lots and lots of money, he would get us visas. And my parents did. They contacted everyone they could find in the world to get loans, to scrape together those few $1,000s. They did. He left. Silence. Well, for those of us who are lawyers, you know the drill. Silence doesn't mean anything. It's just the government wheels don't work very fast. A couple of months go by, my parents are really panicking at this point, and suddenly they get a letter from his law office. Congratulations, your visa's been approved. Your travel arrangements are being made by a nonprofit. And that's how we ended up in the US. So I saw a guy that was able to change a country's position, who was able to move the world for us, who was able to open doors that we ourselves clearly couldn't. And that, at 9, that really resonated. And then in high school, I joined the mock trial team. Or rather, I read about the existence of the New York State Bar Association's high school mock trial team and concept, and I didn't see a club in my high school. So I went to the administration and they said, well, it died off. Nobody was really interested. And I said, well, who's the teacher who ran it? And that was Mr. Negra. I credit him to this day with being an incredible influence. He was a civics teacher and a coach of the mock trial team and a history teacher. And I went to him and said, look, I want to revive this thing. And he said, well, if you can get 6 people, you'll have a team. So I found 6 people. And then we ran a mock trial team. I can't say we won very much, but we tried our best. And you know what? I got the passion. And then when I went to college, the logic was I'm going to go to law school unless by the time I leave college, something better comes along. And when I left college with a degree in computer information systems and a minor in applied mathematics, that was 2002, which, just like when I left law school, was an implosion point after Y2K when the tech bubble burst, and the last thing the world wanted was another computer programmer. So, law school, here I
Wow. That's quite an incredible story within the story. So thank you for sharing that, Alex. Um, I guess how do these life experiences play into, your day-to-day practice, or how you support your clients and the advocacy that you do for them at a high level?
Ooh, in every way imaginable. Commercial law, real estate law, any kind of law you do, it's important to understand how your clients feel, to be able to empathize with them, but to also to be able to understand how they work, how their business model works, how their industry works. So doing commercial litigation, it certainly helps, having been a serial entrepreneur, having run any number of businesses, and having worked on the insides of any number of businesses, because all of those different experiences help me much better understand and work with my clients, because I'm not just a lawyer saying, okay, explain to me how, any other business works so that I can understand what your problem is. I'm able to really work with the client and jump into their industry, because I've been in enough industries that I see how most businesses operate and essentially know the internal procedures.
Fantastic. Going from the formative experiences that got you into law school, or that prompted you to get into law school, to maybe a formative matter or case that fundamentally changed how you practice law. Can you maybe give an example of something that really left a mark on your law practice?
The demutualization of MLMIC. So for most people who would not be familiar with any of what I just said, MLMIC was and still is the largest medical malpractice insurer in New York State. They used to be a mutual company. Now that means that a policyholder is also an owner. And therefore they get the dividends, which are usually applied and credited towards, next year's premium. Well, Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway decided to buy MLMIC. So that means all the policyholders got a cash payout. And really, really large cash payouts in many cases, 6 figures. So the question suddenly became, who does that money go to? And the question was, does it belong to the medical doctors as the policyholders, or the owners of the medical practice, which have been paying for the policy the whole time? Basically, as a law firm, I pay for malpractice insurance that covers all my lawyers. But who is the policyholder, me or them? And so that obviously became a huge dispute. And I ended up dealing with a couple of those cases. And having previously worked in MedMal during law school, I took a real interest in them. And it just happens that my father retired as VP and senior actuary, or really the director of the actuarial department of the second largest med mal insurer in New York State. I basically had some resources on who to speak to, the general counsel over there. And so I was able to really take the case apart and drafted an article for the New York State Bar Association after winning my own cases, after they were no longer an issue. I drafted an article for NISBA, essentially dissecting all of the legal issues and explaining the conclusion. And that was before the case went up to the highest court in New York State, because while my case is settled, many others did not. And so other lawyers were taking their cases up to the Court of Appeals. And it was so incredibly gratifying when the Court of Appeals decision came down and it mirrored my article thought for thought. I mean, they went out of their way not to use my exact language. You know, the clerks had to put in an effort, but you could see they were at times struggling for synonyms. It was pleasure. It was very pleasant to see that. And the way it changed my practice before that, I had not thought of ever publishing an article anywhere because I figured I'm a lawyer, not a writer. Why would I publish in magazines? They're a dying art. No, nobody's going to read it anyway. I wrote that article and I was noticed by a bunch of lawyers that went, oh, wow, where were you 6 months ago? My clients ended up settling and giving away all the money. And if we had this analysis, you know, I would have referred them to you. You could have made a bunch of money. So I learned my lesson, and now I publish, I teach CLEs, I appear on podcasts. I get the word out when there's a legal issue that people can use to their benefit, because quite frankly, that article, my biggest mistake, A, I wrote it too late, B, I wrote it too legalese, and C, I had it published in the New York State Bar Journal. Very professionally gratifying, but it should have been published in the New York State Medical, you know, magazine of some sort. Because who was I trying to attract? The other lawyers? They already know me.
Yeah, that's a great story, and I can see how that gave you some lessons to work off of. Switching gears a little bit, Alex, to innovation and technology. We obviously started this podcast with reference to that. Your firm is modeled as high tech and client centered, and so can you please give us some concrete examples of how technology is embedded in your firm's operations, how you actually use technology, you personally as well as your colleagues, on a day-to-day basis, and what advantages do you think that gives you?
Sure, let me give you the basics of our tech stack. So underlying everything is Clio. That's our practice management system. The practice management system is integrated with our file storage system, which is OneDrive. Also integrated with OneDrive is the rest of our Office platform, Office 365. And then our communications platform is Google Workspace. That gives us our email, our calendar, our chat, and our Google Voice, which provides text messaging and virtual cell phone services. So our clients can communicate with us by text and cell phone, but yet don't have to have our direct cell phone numbers. We have embedded into Clio a whole bunch of integrations that do any number of things. So for instance, the service of process no longer requires us to communicate with a process server and say, hey, can you serve this on Joe Schmo over there? We have a tool called ProofServe, which is integrated in Clio. We click serve, we select which documents, we select who from the contacts or create a new contact, type of service, hit submit, charges the credit card, automatically enters an expense entry into Clio so it can pass through to the client. Service occurs, the affidavit of service gets automatically uploaded into our file system, and we get a notification saying service is done. Now, all of that used to take a whole bunch of effort. Now there's an integration for that. Clio then integrates with our QuickBooks Online, which does all of our bookkeeping and accounting. The invoices and payments are processed from within Clio and then passed through to QuickBooks. And then QuickBooks handles the rest of our finances. And then there's Adobe with Adobe eSign, which we use for all of the document signatures. Between all the Clio integrations and the applications I just mentioned, pretty much everything is available on any platform. So in other words, it all works through a browser or an app on a phone, a tablet, or a computer of your choice. So that leaves us completely platform independent. Everybody can work on whatever devices they want within reason. I will not let anybody work off a Mac. but that could be your follow-up question if you want. But the rest of the tech stack is really like the way we're able to work from anywhere is simply because all of those things are cloud-based. I can just as easily open up my laptop when I'm in Turkey or Kazakhstan and look at QuickBooks or Clio, answer emails, communicate with clients, use Google Voice for my phone calls and text messages. Nobody has to know whether I'm in the office here, in the office in Manhattan, working from home, or working from Tahiti. And that in itself is innovation. Couple that with automated document assembly, automated AI-based document drafting, assistance, not in full. Obviously, the lawyers have to make sure that what the AI gave them is not nonsense, and then turn that first draft into reality. And that is basically all of the key things in the firm. The rest is just hardware of choice. High-speed scanner of choice, high-speed printer of choice, good microphone, camera, whatever, giant 4K monitors, which if I spun my camera around right now, you'd be overwhelmed by the amount of things on my screens right now, because I have two 40-inch 4K monitors with the camera mounted right in between them. And so right now I have 11 windows open, all at the same time, not behind each other, but laid out in such a way where I can simultaneously see everything. I've got fly vision. I've got my task list in Clio. I've got my activities list in Clio. I've got my emails. Over here, I've got my calendar, my text messages and calls in Google Voice, my Chat GPT, which is currently helping me draft a brief and is in the middle of improving on the eloquence of what I wrote. And then over here on this screen, I've got you on the bottom half. And then on the top half, I've got timers running for when next events are occurring and who's doing what. So I can see who at the firm is currently active on what. So fly vision.
That's amazing. Let's double click a little bit into the AI part of this, right? Obviously, there's a lot of advanced technologies that you and your team have clearly seamlessly integrated to streamline your operations. AI is obviously much newer. How do you currently, you gave an example of this, but how do you currently use AI in your operation?
So in almost every way you can imagine, I just don't let it create final drafts. But beyond that, it is one of the best assistants I can hire, because I can ask it to do anything and it'll happen in the blink of an eye, or at most 20 minutes if I use deep research and really give it a challenge. I can't use it for legal research because it will create cases. It will give me what I want to hear. Now, giving me what I want to hear is great if I tell it what I want, like a demand letter or a letter to a client or discovery demands or any number of things. It's not a good idea if I ask it to write arguments and it writes the arguments I want and then gives me case law that doesn't support it or doesn't even exist. So that is my one limitation on AI. I cannot have it do legal research. Even the law-specific products like Westlaw and Lexis are just not good at it. And they don't hallucinate the way ChatGPT or Claude might, but they don't produce a result that is even remotely equivalent to manual searching. So using AI, everything from initial case analysis and factual review, drafting pleadings, drafting affidavits based on stacks of facts, reviewing discovery. We can do all sorts of things with AI. And we can have it draft a brief. In fact, I'm having it draft a legal brief now. It's just the trick is if I wanted to write me a good legal brief, I separately do my own legal research, save all of it as a file or a set of files, dump that into the generative AI together with all of the factual evidence, information, timeline, etc. And then I have to say to it, create a brief for a motion for whatever, limiting yourself only to the legal arguments that can be made based on the attached legal research and statutory law. Do not create any argument that you can't support from this. Do not quote to anything that's not attached. Now it creates a work product that's comparable to a third-year associate. And it does it in a few minutes. That certainly makes things more efficient. Now, that's not going to be a final work product, but if I can take that and then have one of the associates polish it, or if it's a more complex case, I'll polish it, then what used to take 20 or 30 hours can be done in 3 or 4. Clients definitely appreciate that. We bill hourly. So in the end, I can be more efficient. That means I can take on more clients. I can serve them all and still make the same money while they're all paying less. And that works for me.
That's fantastic. That is one of the most sophisticated takes on using technology in litigation and driving value for clients that at least I've heard of. So thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about lawyers on the other end of the spectrum, right? And so there's a lot of misconceptions and resistance to integrating technologies and especially AI into legal operations and certainly into drafting and things like that. What is your advice, or what framework would you give to attorneys who maybe are reluctant to sort of take the leap or the leaps that you have?
Well, I'm certainly not going to disagree with you that lawyers are Luddites. I spend so much of my time teaching CLEs on technology to lawyers that I have to say, at this point, I could probably teach a wall to use Microsoft Word in the time I've spent. And that takes us, in fact, to why I won't let anybody use Apple, because Microsoft Word doesn't behave the same on Apple. If I send you a document right now from a PC that was made in Microsoft Word, and it has, let's say, page numbers in the footer, if you open it on a Mac, the page numbers will be in a floating little text box. And then when you send it back to me, it's going to stay in a floating little text box. I didn't sign up for that. Nobody edited that. And yet Microsoft took it upon itself to modify the file back and forth and screw it all up for me. Well, most lawyers don't know Microsoft Word well enough to understand the difference between a text box and a footnote. So when I think about introducing lawyers to AI, yes, there's about 3% of lawyers out there that are ready to really embrace AI. There's another 10% that can use it, but with great caution because they don't understand its limitations well enough and they're not going to take the time to. And so if they start relying on it, it will just give them bad information and they'll end up getting disbarred or at least sanctioned. More and more, there's left and right, I'm hearing news of lawyers who created cases that weren't true, made legal arguments that didn't exist, cited to statutes that weren't there. And it's like, really, come on, guys. Like, you're the lawyer, you're signing your name to it. Please, please, please read what you are submitting. Make sure it's real. It's not too much to ask. So we're pushing AI on lawyers, and by we, I mean the industry. But I don't know that most lawyers are truly ready for AI. I think we need to start with the basics. Let's learn how Windows works, because how many lawyers do you think have their indexing turned on and have all the folders that they have files in indexed? I'm gonna again guess 3%, 5% if we include the firms that have an IT department that actually goes out and does this for them. That is the hugest game changer in the world. Indexing. A lawyer who has indexing enabled and a lawyer who doesn't, there's at least 20% efficiency in drafting. And you're going to say, why? It's just indexing. You're sitting there drafting, you're typing. No, you're not. Most of legal drafting is remembering other cases where you had similar argument, fishing out those affirmations, finding that text, finding that case law, reapplying it to the new case, shepherdizing that case law in case it changed, and then voila, there's your work product. So how amazing is it to have all of your work product for the last, however many years you've run a firm, all indexed so that you can type in keywords the same way you would into a search engine and have all your documents instantly appear that have them. I mean, that saves so much time. And yet, I guarantee you I can walk into 20 law offices and at least 19 of them will not have indexing enabled on their Windows machines. You're going to say that they need to spend money on AI? They need to spend money learning how Windows works. Start with the absolute basics. Windows, Microsoft Word, Adobe Acrobat. When I see lawyers redacting things by hand, I cringe. I literally see documents sent to me where I know that the person typed up the document, but then it's a PDF that was clearly scanned in. Why? because they printed it, black sharpied it, and crossed things out on it to
Wow.
redact, scanned it back in, and sent it to me. And the saddest part of all that isn't even that, this is technologically pathetic. The really saddest part of all this is what they don't get is that black Sharpie does not fully cover printed black text, because if I open up that PDF and I play with the contrast and lighting, I'll see exactly what they Sharpied out. Now, should they care? Should they know? Should they improve their behaviors? One would think, but in the decade of me saying these things, nobody seems to care. So not nobody, but it's an uphill battle. So lawyers embracing tech and AI. Let's start with Windows, Office, Word, Excel, Outlook if they use it, if they use Gmail and Google Calendar, that. There are so many features that will automate their lives, that will answer emails on their behalf, that will categorize incoming communications. You can sit there manually entering time every time you read an email from a client and respond to it, or you can have that email tagged into your practice management system automatically so that it enters the communication in there, it puts in the time, and then if you're away to Tahiti and away from your cell phone, any other lawyer in the firm can see that communication and be fully caught up on what's going on. Or you can get what I hear from most lawyers when I call them and they're out of the office of, oh, I don't have the file in front of me. Can we talk next Tuesday when I'm there? And I think to myself, can't you put me on speaker? Pull out your phone, maybe even flip it from phone to tablet or something, and, look it up. And then I'm told, no, we have a paper file, or it's computerized, but only on the computer in the office.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. You want me to answer?
Yeah, no, I was going to ask my next question. I think it might be a little bit moot, but I'll ask it anyway. So where do you see the biggest opportunities for innovation within legal tech beyond obviously the basics of Windows and Word, because that's not innovation for technology firms, but for firms that are looking to at least support or better enable tech forward attorneys such as yourself, where should those firms focus their efforts?
So there's two categories, litigation and transactions, as far as I'm concerned. When it comes to litigation, as I already mentioned, the biggest problem with AI right now is the absolutely low quality legal research, or the invented legal research. Wouldn't it be amazing if there was an AI product specifically trained solely on case law? Give it Google Scholar. How nice would it be if Gemini would actually integrate Google Scholar into itself? It is the same company after all. And why can't I drop in a document into Gemini and say, review all of my arguments in this document and try to find case law from New York courts that support each of the legal propositions therein? To the extent you find some, pepper them in there. To the extent there are quotes that are particularly on point, pepper them in there. Why can't I have that? And while I'm at it, why can't I have another AI, or maybe the same AI, that I can drop a brief in from, say, opposing counsel, or say from one of my associates, and say, review all the citations, read that case law, and tell me if it's being cited correctly, or if it even exists, or if somebody's manipulating the words in it in order to misstate what the real meaning of it is. Now, technically, all of this should be very doable by AI. Very, very doable. But for some reason, there isn't a single company that has truly trained a Claude or a ChatGPT level product solely on case law and statutory law. Now, if somebody would do that and then keep it updated, oh, what a wonderful product it would be. That would be the thing that would essentially make litigation mostly AI based. I'd be able to drop in all the documents into AI, have it create a factual statement for me that provides a chronology and an organized statement of everything that happened. The client can review that and make sure it's all accurate, drop it back into the AI and say, now come up with really good arguments for why my client should win. And then drop it into another AI and say, now find me legal citations that support those arguments. and circle it back and forth a few times until all my arguments are solid and well cited. And I'd be able to do a brief in an hour and a half. Now, there's a lot of danger to that if it's misused. But if it's built properly and only provided to lawyers who know how to use it, it could be really awesome. And to that end, by the way, I think lawyers should be required to get certified in it. I don't know by who, because there's no certification agency on any of this. But I think anybody who's going to professionally use a tool should be trained in using it. So in my opinion, it would be ideal if lawyers actually took a Microsoft Word certification course. It wouldn't kill them. It wouldn't be a bad idea to take an Adobe certification course. And if you're going to use ChatGPT, take some classes on it. Learn how the prompts work. Learn how to limit certain hallucinations and certain errors by creating correct prompts. But back to the best innovations we can have. So that was litigation. In transactions, what we really need is not so much an AI tool. I mean, sure, AI would be involved here, but what would be really awesome is a project management tool. Imagine if there was a portal that was equally shared by buyers and sellers' attorney, where the other logging in parties would be the real estate brokers, the parties themselves, the mortgage broker, the bank attorney, all the parties that could possibly need to be in a transaction can log into a single portal at transaction.com, and everyone can make document requests there that everybody else sees. There'd be timers of this document's due by June 2nd. Oh, look, document submitted, green check mark. And the entire transaction could be put on a calendar with tasks, with document requests, with statuses of what each side is doing. Bank underwriter reviewing this, standing by for clear to close. Seller's attorney needs to produce ABC. Buyer's attorney needs to produce DEF. And all of it on a single screen that everybody could see, full transparency, full automation, with automated reminders from the AI to everybody who didn't submit their documents. I mean, it honestly doesn't even have to be AI, it's a timer. We're not looking at super high-end tech, but a portal that would manage a transaction from start to finish, ideally automatically generating, based on templates, all of the documents that need to be prepared along the way. So in other words, real estate transaction starts, the brokers create a transaction.com entry, populate who the lawyers and the clients are, and populate the deal sheet. The lawyer for the seller reviews the deal sheet, clicks generate contract. Lawyer for the buyer reviews the contract and the deal sheet, clicks approve. Parties e-sign. Buyer identifies whose mortgage broker is, invites them into the portal. Buyer identifies who their title company is, or buyer's attorney does, adds them into the portal, and so on and so forth. And everybody just does all their work in the portal until the final closing documents are generated there and then uploaded up there for the title company to submit them for recording with the county clerk. If I had the time, I would build exactly such a thing, but who's got the time? I'm leaving that to people who still run IT companies. I closed mine down a while ago.
Well, speaking of time, Alex, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I want to be respectful of your time. Last couple of questions for you as we wrap up here. So, given all that you've shared, given all that you know, given all that you've seen, what advice would you give an attorney who's maybe just starting off earlier in their career and looking to navigate today's landscape in terms of not just technology, but society, the practice of law, and all of that? What's some high-level guidance that you might want to provide?
Be active in your state bar. If you're opening up a new firm, don't go crazy spending money on things that you think you need. When I started my law firm, my budget was basically $200. I had a computer, I had a printer, I had a phone. What else did I really need? All the software that I named, if you're a solo practitioner, all in, you can get all that stuff for $120 a month. Your first month should be buy a domain, build a simple website, get yourself a reasonable number of business cards if you still meet people in person, and establish all your social media presence. After that, Spend your $120 a month on the basic software and focus on servicing your clients. When you have the money, you can always buy more stuff and invest in more tech. But people often spend a lot of money on tech that they don't know how to use and that they don't get the value out of. So every time you buy, be conscientious about the fact that it's costing you money. It's going to take up space. It's going to use electricity. And if it's just going to sit there and do nothing for you, don't buy it.
Fantastic. And final question for you, Alex. What is a question that I should have asked you, but I didn't?
Well, that's an interesting one. Well, I suppose a fun one that I probably would have refused to answer anyway would be, what is the focus of next year's tech show, since I am on the board again?
Yes.
But I'm not going to tell you. Instead, I'll tell you that you got to go to Tech Show to find out. And every lawyer listening to this who doesn't know what Tech Show is, shame on you. TechShow.com. Couldn't be any simpler. The greatest show on earth when it comes to legal tech. So for anybody who really wants to embrace legal technology, you go to the Tech Show, you know what it's like.
Yep.
It's an amazing place with all the vendors there that you could possibly imagine, and many you couldn't, where you can kick the tires on all kinds of software and hardware, have them there to show you how it works, and actually ask the questions and ask for the demos that will help you understand, do you need this thing or is it useless? Not to mention so many CLE options that you can actually learn, Word, Outlook, Excel, whatever it is you use, in a 2-day program with lots of tech training and lots of hands-on vendor interaction. So what I would say is, my final thoughts for every lawyer and paralegal listening is, go to Tech Show, learn about technology, embrace technology, but do it in that order. Learn, then embrace. Do not embrace technology you don't know how to use. And that's it.
Fantastic. +1 for Tech Show. That's how we connected, and it's been a pleasure, Alex. So thank you so much for your time. I'm sure our audience will love this. And thanks, and take care.
Hi, pleasure being here. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Litigator's Edge podcast, brought to you by Threadio.